Welcome to another edition of Lesson Notes, and I'm excited to bring you a new client that I saw this week. So this player is a senior in high school looking to play collegiate golf. And, as a framework, we always start with, what are the pain points, what are the problems? So as this player is coming into the session, their main issues are, one, they've noticed that they're not hitting as far as they used to. Two, they're hitting it very, very low and really hitting a lot of low left and toe shots. So anytime that someone comes to see me, I'm always thinking in that way, like, what is the problem? And then when we look at the video, we don't want to look at the video for just cosmetic problems. We want to look at the problems relative to what the player is experiencing. So the video on the left is a 6-iron. The video on the right is a 7-iron, which is going to be interesting with the TrackMan data, as you can see, because the ball speed is not that much different, even though the two clubs are very different. In fact, he's hitting his 7-iron now about as far as he was hitting his 6-iron, and we'll get to that in a second. So let's start with the video on the left and really talk about the two things that we discussed. So as we go to the top, so the 2 points of concern are one, he's hitting really down and he's swinging very left. So his swing direction is -7 and his attack angle is almost 9 degrees down. So you got to think about what the consequence of those things are. So one, if you're hitting 9 degrees down with a 6-iron, you're probably going to hit it really low. And if you're swinging 7 degrees left, you're probably going to see a lot of toe strikes, even though the club path is to the right. So occasionally he hits a nice draw, but it's mainly, some pretty low lefts. So immediately I'm looking at, there seems to be a lack of rotation. So if I kind of cue in here on the lower body, not a ton of daylight. And then secondly, we can see the club is very laid off at the top. As we discussed in previous videos, laid off just really means that the club is pointed, way outside the golf ball like that. So immediately I'm looking at those two things as, I bet if we change those two things, the TrackMan data would change, which ultimately would change the ball flight. So as we play this swing down, just very slowly, you can see it's a pretty nice downswing. Like, there's nothing crazy going on. It does look very neutral. It's okay there. Like, honestly, like around the red line looks great. So then where does this left swing direction come from? It really comes right here where he starts turning hard, and you're going to see at impact the club just really goes left and kind of starts to go below that line. So, I forgot to say, coming into the session, he said, I want to hit a high draw. Well, this does not look like a high draw. This looks like maybe a low pull or maybe a thin right. And so you can kind of see the club exit really low. Overall, though, his swing cosmetically looks okay. I'd say he was probably hitting it worse than his swing looks, just because of how low the ball was launching. There's some stuff in his face on too, like he was leaning a little bit left. But I can only post these down the line videos just to give you some reference. So if we go back to the top, okay, so just remember 88 miles an hour club speed that you can see, 127 ball speed, and just very down and left. Only 180 in the air. All right, so the two things that I cued him to do on the backswing were, one, I wanted to feel a lot of belt buckle rotation on the backswing, and I wanted him to feel like he was getting his wrists or the club head to be more across the line, which is actually something that he's worked on in the past. So if we go to the backswing here and we kind of compare the daylight between the knees, we can see that there. So much more daylight, and then you can also see the club is in a totally different position at the top. And so what that is going to do is, one, there is more length to the backswing, which is the increase in club head speed. So to go from 88 miles an hour to 90 with a shorter club is very nice. But then secondly, where the shaft is pointing, the club is just going to come down a little bit shallower. And so because he wants to be hitting a draw, we're going to see that this club kind of actually gets underneath this line into a really nice spot where the swing direction on this swing, I think, was right at 0.1. And the attack angle was much more shallow, which if you're hitting a 7-iron, it should actually be steeper. So if we compare that to the other swing, it's just more on the line at this position. He's just on that line. They're not perfectly the same position, but they're pretty darn close. You can see that at those two positions, you can see the daylight on the video on the right is a little bit more behind, but that may just be like timing of the swing. I think the main thing was, as we got the left shoulder more turned on the backswing relative to where it was, the two consequences of having the club more across the line. And again, when I'm saying across the line, the feeling is he's getting the club pointed at these trees over here, if I draw a little dot or a little box. Yeah, so we don't want the club pointing. We don't want the club pointing at these trees. We want them almost feeling that way. And that's just going to be something really important if you're trying to hit a high draw. Like normally if I say to someone, I want you to hit a really, really high draw, they instinctively do those things. And then the length of swing obviously is coming with more club head speed. Now, an interesting thing on the downswing, let me clean this up. Because when you're really thinking about swing direction, you're thinking about kind of a hip-to-hip motion. So from here, right, so we can kind of see the club is inside, it's inside, and now as he exits, do we see how the club head is staying outside the line? So that looks like the path is slightly to the right. We can see the ball starts out very far right, doesn't start out left. If we go back to this first one, right, he's on this line, the shaft is starting to steepen because of the laid-off position, and now he goes low left. So that really is, for those of you that don't have TrackMan, if you just look at the two differences of those swings and the impact positions and where the club goes, that is the difference between someone swinging 6 or 7 left and swinging 0, or swinging 8 or 9 degrees down and 5 degrees down. Like that's kind of the manifestation on video of what that would look like. Where even though the club path is only about 3 degrees different, how the club got there, how the path got there is very, very different. So, as we always talk about in these videos, we're not making changes based on cosmetics. We're changing based on what the player's feedback is. So when he comes into session saying he's hitting it really, really short, now he's hitting his 7-iron about as far as 8-iron. Now, why is that? So the launch angle on and I don't have this data showing, but I have it on my TrackMan. His launch angle with his 6-iron was 10 degrees. Okay, so that would be a fairly low driver. And his launch angle with his 7-iron on the right here was 15 degrees, so a 5-degree difference, which really comes from the angle of attack for the most part. He went from hitting 8.5, 9 degrees down to only hitting 5 down. Well, there's your, 3.5, 4, 5 degrees. So if you are able to hit on a TrackMan, that data would correlate with the things that you want to see in your swing. So I like to couple what the video says with the TrackMan data, and generally that's going to give you a framework of the kind of shot you're trying to hit. If you're not hitting the ball the way that you want, even though your swing looks good on video, likely you need to see some data. And then lastly from there, the follow-through is just maybe a little bit higher on the follow-through. It's not getting as low left. On the follow-through. But in general, I'd say the main thing here was changing the backswing. Again, the backswing sets up the downswing. So if we get the spot in the backswing where we want, and again, this is not wrong. The position he's doing here is not wrong on the left. It just has consequence. There is consequence to everything you do in the swing. If he does the swing on the right, he's going to hit higher draws. It's going to be shallower. He may see some heel strikes. He might hit some overdraws. So those are all things that you have to manage. You're not going to have the perfect swing that is going to solve everything. It's more about changing the ball flight into in general the shots you want. If someone's saying I'm showing up wanting to hit a high draw and they're hitting low pull draws, well, that's a big problem. So in summary, just make sure that you're able to correlate the video with something that you're seeing as a pain point or a problem. And that will lead ultimately to consistency. If you're changing your swing just based on cosmetics, that is a disaster of a way to go about it, and you'll never be happy. And the ball flight's not going to correlate. So swing positions don't create consistent ball flight. Look at the data, then correlate it with the swing, and then that will surely help. So hopefully that you enjoyed the video. I'm posting these every Monday. Leave a comment if it was helpful. And maybe one of these I'll actually have some people send in some video and I can kind of analyze that. So thanks for watching, and best of luck next time you're at the range.